It's Thursday morning and we're in Simpsonville and we're getting ready to go over to the Greer Hospital for a very good friend of ours who's having shoulder surgery this morning. We've known for over 40 years and been a very special friend, moved up here from Florida, and now we moved into the same general area that they have. So I hope that you'll pray for a friend called Yvette. She has this shoulder surgery and that there will not be more than what the doctors expected and that everything will come out fine. Today, as we get into chapter 17 again, in Luke 17 and 18, there's a lot of strange things that are going on there. And when you start to read through some of the things that Jesus taught his disciples, some of them are a little difficult to understand sometimes. For example, here in verse 5, it says, the apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? They recognized they didn't have the faith that they ought to have, and they were hoping that somehow Jesus could just wave a magic wand over the top of them and increase their faith. But we all know that faith doesn't come that way, does it? You have faith for salvation and you have faith for certain things, but there's also a certain type of faith that increases as you mature as a Christian. As you learn that you can trust him more and more, you tend to have greater and greater faith. And here's what Jesus said to them. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain or mulberry tree, be moved and be planted in the sea, and it will obey you. Well, certainly Jesus doesn't say that we should say, okay, if we live in the mountains and we want to live at the beach, we can just go out and say, okay, mountain, get out of here and go into the sea and let's pour some sand out here and have the ocean here. Every time we have faith, our faith has to be based on whether or not we're really believing that this is Jesus' will. You see, I believe that Jesus has a certain amount of action that he takes, which is his perfect will or his perfect desire for our lives. Then sometimes I believe he allows us to have our permissive way, not because he thinks that's necessarily best for us, but we keep persisting and he finally says, okay, I can see the only way you're going to learn to trust me more and to have more faith is to let you have your way, even though it's not best for you. I call it permissive will. Perfect will is much better. And when it's in his perfect will, we could have absolute faith that anything that we ask, he will do. But following right behind that one sentence statement about faith, he talks about slaves and he talks about their role as it regards to their master. He said if they're out plowing in a field and they come in, they don't ask the master to fix them something to eat, but rather the master asks them to fix him something to eat. And he also makes it very, very clear that when the slaves have done all of the things they're supposed to do, they shouldn't be waiting around like a master would wait around on a farm to thank his slaves or his workers for what they've done. Because after all, they did what they were supposed to do. That's kind of harsh sometimes when we think about it, that Jesus is saying we shouldn't stand around looking for God to recommend and pat us on the back and thank us and bow down before us because we did just what we're supposed to do. So sometimes I think we get it all backwards. We think when we do something that's in God's will, we serve him in some way that he should be right there patting us on the back and glorifying us, when in fact all we did was what he commanded us to do and the way he commanded us to live. It's real easy to get pride about doing the good things, and it's real hard to be humble and recognize what he says in this final verse, in verse 9 and 10. And he says, in the same way, when they have done all that we've commanded, you should say, we're good for nothing slaves, and we've only done what was our duty. Boy, that's tough, isn't it? We're just good for nothing slaves, and we've just done what we're supposed to do. But really, that's the attitude we ought to have. And we ought to realize that when we do the things he says to do, it's for our good and it's for our fulfillment, not for the acclamations of man or even the acclamations of our Lord. I'm sure he's pleased. I'm sure that a worker, when he comes in from working and has done a good job, his master is pleased that he's done a good job. But he's not there fixing him a meal and thanking him for doing it. Well, that's your thought for the day. Have a great day.